Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, where I interview great leaders and try to extract their wisdom and experience for you to learn from and hopefully avoid making their mistakes. Check out practical-leadership.academy because you want to help your new managers succeed with hybrid or remote working. Vinit Patel, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Pleasure to be here.
Well, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Vinit Patel. I'm co-founder at Filtered, a learning technology business. And I've spent much of my career, the last 15 years, working in, investing, helping startup businesses.
Well, where did you get to at Filtered? I mean, so far you've been out there for what, 127 years, right? I know these journeys, they feel like that sometimes. I mean, so many founders and so many senior people in startups, it's like, I'm still full of beans, but oh my God, I've been at it for like 26 years or however long it feels.
Yeah.
How do you keep your energy going?
I'm not sure it's accurate to still call us a startup, but it's very much a startup in all respects, apart from maybe the length of time that we've been working on it. Mostly because we've done a bunch of different things in the last 13 years. How do I keep the energy up? I think the short answer is working in bursts. So for me, and I think this has helped my own personality and the things that I'm good at and like doing, it's often been a different focus or a different role every 6 to 12 months. That hasn't really been by design. Initially, I was COO for a long time, so that just required me to focus on and do different things in the business, and that often did change every 6 months or so. But more recently, it has been a more sort of designed thing that I've done to switch things up and to make that the source of new energy and to try and keep things going.
I suppose you can do that in an organization, number one, where A, you're the owner, number one, A, where you're the owner, number two, B, where it's small enough that you have the oversight and the ability to do all these different things. But I can see it's a wonderful idea. A lot harder to do in a bigger organization. You can't quite jump from being the head of legal to being the chief salesperson.
I think bigger companies, not maybe the massive ones, but I think bigger companies are noticing and realizing that a big part of talent retention requires them to create these diagonal career journeys for people, and do a lot more horizontal stuff, moving into different roles, adjacent roles. And actually, I tell most new people that join our company or anyone that's looking to develop and stay with us, look at the LinkedIn profiles of most of your colleagues and people that have worked here before. They have all had the opportunity to and been very encouraged to move around. So it's definitely a trait of a small business. And I think the best small businesses do it well and create those opportunities, because I think it works well for everyone. It helps the individual get a much broader and different perspective. The business benefits from it as well. But actually, that person going around has so much retained knowledge that it can really help new and emerging parts of the business develop in ways that it wouldn't have done had it been a brand new team. Of course, there are some cons to it. Sometimes you might not have such an experienced person in that role. Often the case for me, I'm typically brought in to do the 0 to 1 stuff, right? I am not an expert in demand generation, which is the role I'm doing now, or wasn't an expert in customer success when I first started doing that a few years ago, right? But you apply yourself, and crucially, I think you lean on others that have done it and been there before to kind of assist your own efforts.
I think if you said leaning on others, it's a great thing always to find a coach, mentor type person, somebody who can coach the best out of you, but mentor you in your deficiencies, or mentor you on the functional stuff that you actually need to know how to do. Diagonal career, I love that phrase. There's if you think against the bigger companies, normally you get the high potential types, these hypos, the fast tracks. These are the boys and girls who get shoved off to Singapore for 6 months and then off to Bangalore for 6 months, and then they're in the Tokyo office for 6 months. They're working in supply chain, they're working in legal, they're working in HR, they're working in engineering, so that they are being groomed on the path to divisional leadership and all that sort of stuff. Being able to do that in a smaller company is quite a powerful advantage. As you said, you get that breadth of understanding, if not necessarily the depth, but you certainly get the breadth of understanding across an organization that really builds institutional memory, that makes it very, very attractive. It's a very attractive proposition.
And hopefully it allows you to tell a much more compelling career story and career journey when you're out there looking for your next gig, or if you've got a side gig or side hustle where you're advising other companies or peers, or you're coaching yourself, or you want to go and create a bunch of content about what you've been doing, whatever it might be, whatever your stick is, you've got to be able to have those experiences is more likely to spark your creativity, to allow you to unearth new opportunities for yourself. So yeah, I think I've definitely benefited from that. It helps, obviously, being a founder, but I've also tried to massively encourage others to take a similar approach, including certain members of the existing team, who, if they're listening to this now, will know exactly who they are.
No names, no pack drill. Yeah, it's I was talking about this not that long ago. It's the idea of a functional promotional path as well. It's that if you got somebody in a job and they think, well, the next promotion step in my career is a promotion to be a manager. And you're looking at them going, I am never giving you a team to manage because you hate people, or you're just not that sort of person. So what do you do with them? Well, they quit and go off somewhere else. If you can give them a functional promotional path, you're saying, well, actually, I'm going to give you experience here. I'm going to let you deepen that, or go diagonally, go somewhere else, go from demand into customer, go from something to, that's
100%. I mean, I'm just thinking about we're a team of 25, 30 people right now. Easily half of that team that's been with us for at least 2 years. Some of them who have been with us shorter have already done that and are doing that today. And I think actually we, as a small business, and probably most startups generally, don't fully appreciate ourselves or value ourselves, how important and useful that is to members in the team. Not everyone is cut out to be a team lead or team manager at that point in their career, or possibly any point in their career. Sometimes you kind of have to do it to know that, to work that out for yourself. I can fully understand that. But like you say, actually the more helpful thing might be to have a stint in another area of the business. Ultimately, it goes to show that you're responsible enough and are considered to be an expert even in that business, in that domain, to be given those new additional responsibilities. I think it's a huge thing. And actually, we as business owners, as founders, as managers, should do more to support and encourage that, and to formalize it to the extent that we possibly can, so that it's seen as a thing that people do, rather than just oh, by the way, maybe you should go off and do this now.
Mm-hmm.
That's an afterthought. Be a lot more intentional and proactive about those developmental paths.
Yeah, I mean, the intent behind these things, I think, is always questionable. There's so many times you look around and you think, that guy over there, she or he or she was really, really clever because that's what they did. And then you speak to them and realize they fell on their ass. They had no damn clue what they were doing. And it looked good because the outcome was good, but what you didn't see were the 3 other bits of rubbish that happened. So yes, we can make these things intentional, but as you discovered, just doing it because you needed to do it is probably the driver that you need.
Yeah, 100%.
So on that journey you've been on, at what point did you first become a people manager?
I'd say it was quite early on. So when the business started 2009, it was just the 3 founders working together alongside each other. And then about 3 years in, when we started to grow the team, is when we started to hire people. And then I became a first-time manager properly. And I remember my CEO, Mark, who giving me this little orange book. It was HBR's 50 tips to being a good manager. And it was so cute and nice. It was, had a little hardback. It would fit into my pocket. And I made it a thing that I would open up every day on the train into work, to just read a few lines about this new tip. And I remember distinctly thinking, I wonder how many of these 50 things I'm actually doing day to day. I'm going through it thinking, maybe 10 if I'm lucky. Like, wow, there's a lot of stuff that I need to do as a manager. And I've still got my actual job to do and a bunch of other stuff to do as well. It's quite daunting.
Well, do you know what? I think if you're doing 10 out of the HBR 50, that's probably a measure of success.
I'm probably exaggerating. It's probably more like 2.
Even that, I tell you. I mean, the number. I mean, we were talking about that. Is that I boiled down what I think the management tasks are, and it's highly subjective, but the essentials down to about just over a dozen, 18 or so things you really need to be able to do, like setting objectives, giving feedback, holding people accountable, all that sort of stuff. And even more so when you're now remote, you actually have to not just be okay at them, you actually have to be good at this because you're remote. You could be kind of a half-arsed lazy manager in an office because you get instant feedback, instant gratification if it goes well, and an instant the hell if it goes horribly wrong. If you're remote, you don't get those signals. You just miss them all the time. So you have this duty for productivity as well as the care of the people you're working with to actually get the basics right.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's really hard to figure that out for yourself. It takes a long time, and that's that. And I was a manager for the first time in an office, right? Not in a remote environment. So I would struggle to empathize with someone who's a remote first people manager now for the first time, because there's a lot more that I think is different and is harder in many respects. So if you've got some frameworks and ways in which you can apply yourself, then grab them, take them, use them.
Totally.
It's hard.
What frameworks or advice or something? What would you give as advice to a first-time people manager just now? Then,
there's a few things. I think I would seek out a few, not too many, although I think that's probably not too much of a risk for most people. I would seek out a few, one or two people managers who you have seen or come across, even if it's not, maybe even better if it's not in your existing company, that you can use as a coach or as a friend to just help you out, to be your sounding board, to go and just riff with. Because I remember when I was that first time manager, someone who I'd seen operate in another business, I remember messaging her and saying, by the way, I'm a manager, I've just become a manager, like, what do I do? What do I need to do? Because I've seen the way that you operate with your team, and it's amazing. Like, I was part of a team as a consultant for a bit. I was like, this is incredible. I just loved her approach to how she managed people. Like, I'm not sure I could be that person yet, or possibly even ever. Like, help me out here. And she was great. She gave me some bits of advice. And then I was sort of off on my journey and figuring a few things out for myself. And I think that made a big difference, knowing that I had someone that I could pick up the phone to or send a text to, just be like, by the way, I'm just struggling with this. What would you do? And it was So Rachel Spedding, if you're listening to this by any chance, thank you. That was you, by the way, over 10 years ago.
Rachel, we're going to come knocking on your door next. So you seek out a coach or a mentor. So you get a coach who can unlock your potential, a mentor who can maybe fill in some of the blanks.
Yes, that. The other thing I would say is go easy on yourself. I think it's really, really easy to just be quite hard on yourself, to think that that you're failing or not doing a great job. So go easy on yourself, because I think in the early days I often felt that, like, how my team performs is a direct reflection of me, and that's not always the case, right? I mean, often it possibly is, but actually sometimes the situation that you're in, or the people that you've inherited, you may not have hired them, and this, that, and the other, you can find yourself in a pretty tricky situation very quickly. And I've seen, and I've sometimes experienced, whether it's a first-time manager or even as an experienced manager, oh my goodness, like, this is not this person, or the way that we are operating here is not up to my standards, this is going to reflect really badly on me, right? And I think at that point you sort of do need to just first do your best to look after yourself, and then secondly, very importantly, go and speak to your own managers and the leadership in your business and be like, by the way, I don't think this is working. Let's try and figure this out together. Rather than what I think a lot of first-time managers and experienced managers do is sort of hide away in a corner and think that they can try to figure it out themselves. Again, I would find myself in some of those situations because I like to be a reasonably self-sufficient kind of person. I'm not very often the person that will ask for help or go looking for help, in that way. So yeah, I'd say sort of go easy on yourself, and again, sort of echoing the theme of the first point, seek out help and go take these problems as you come across them and see them to other people in your business, because there's a good chance there's others that are either thinking the same thing and or have the advice and the experience to help you navigate some of them as well.
So how do you go and ask for help? It's easier said than done. I mean, ego is a big thing, right?
Ego is a big thing, yeah. Ego is a big thing. Who
do you ask first? You came up with that as an idea. So let's say, who do you ask and how do you ask them? And what are you asking?
Usually, I would say your direct line manager should be your first port of call, right? So whoever that is. If you're in a small business and you're lucky enough to have a dedicated people or HR person that might be able to offer some advice, put them on the list as well. And or because sometimes your direct line manager and or the HR people person, if they exist, may not be that experienced themselves. It's often the case in small startups. Ideally, then seek out someone who is experienced enough. If it's not the CEO themselves, it might be another leader within the business, and say, "Hey, this is the problem that I've got right now," and then list it out. And again, ideally, write it down. So write down what you think the problems are, what you've done to try and resolve them, what you think needs to happen, and any questions that you've got, even if it's just, I really don't know what to do next. Because I think in writing it down, you also give yourself an opportunity to process what it is you're seeing and feeling and experiencing, rather than just spewing it all out on a call or over a coffee with someone. It allows you and your brain to sort of, to the extent that it can, structure and process some of these things. And a lot of the time, you'll probably find, as I did and still do, it's quite an emotional thing. And the process of writing it down allows you to sort of separate some of the emotion as well.
So it's almost like self-coaching. You're saying one of the best questions you can, I think, ask yourself is, if this was happening to somebody else, what would I advise?
Yeah, exactly. Imagine you got a friend coming to you with the problem that you have. What would you say to your friend? And imagine you're doing it over a beer or coffee or whatever, and you really care about them, your friend, right? What would be the advice that you give? Because I think when you then think about it in that way, you're hopefully giving your friend the best possible advice, but in the best possible way as well. Some of which might be stuff like, go easy on yourself, don't make this your own problem. A problem shared is a problem halved, all those sorts of things, right?
Totally is.
And I think the other thing, and this is a different sort of thread, but I think it's one worth exploring. If it's about performance, if the issue is about performance and or about progression, because that's the other thing, as a first-time manager, sometimes it depends what the problem is, right? And if it's a problem that you relate to or that you've experienced yourself as an individual contributor, one of the challenges that I've experienced over the years is one of progression. Like, how do I give this individual or this team that I now have and run and I'm responsible for a sense that there is more than just their current job for them to go after, either because they're coming asking me or because I want to open their eyes to it, or because they're trying to figure things out themselves, like, which direction should my career go in? And I think progression and progression frameworks, as a sort of a hard sort of black and white way of it manifesting, are a thing that a lot of startups do often overlook and don't pay enough attention to. And we've certainly been through that journey, and continue to today.
Yeah. It's all about them, isn't it? It's all about the people piece. I mean, all the biggest challenges that I coach and mentor all sorts of leaders and managers, and the biggest, naughtiest challenges are never the technical, architectural, structural, organizational stuff. Yes, territory planning. Yes, 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 compensation stuff and things and partner conflict. So these are really naughty, complicated things when you've got multiple moving parts plus legal things. Yeah. But then it's all about but she wants a promotion and I don't have one. And if she quits, I'm screwed because she's the only person who knows how to do X. What do we do? How do we get more money? What is it? What's the conversation? How do you hold? They're the toughies. They're the ones that actually sit on your lap and stew.
Yeah. Yeah, you go to bed thinking about it. You wake up in the morning thinking about it. It occupies your mind, especially if you're like most people, I think. You care about the individual in the team. And it's a lesson that I learned quite well last year, the hard way, when I inherited our customer success team. It was a few funny things that happened. Inherited a customer success team, but without any customer success managers, because for various reasons they had left. And so started 2022 with a book of business that I needed to go away and expand, and no CSMs, but had 3 brilliant implementation managers. And we were shifting the business model. So initially, first quarter was like, okay, let's just leave things as they are, work very hard and see where we get to. Clocked a few wins, great. Got to Q2, and then for other reasons, the product team were just flying and doing great stuff. It became clearer to me that actually these implementation managers were more like CSMs than implementation managers. So let's have a conversation and let's find a way of moving them into CSM roles if it's the right thing to do for them and for the business. Went through all of that stuff, and for someone who's got a strong bias for action, I was actually doing it what felt like a very slow way. Having lots of meaningful conversations, trying to get lots of different perspectives, writing down lots of stuff, making the plan as clear as possible, and did this over a good few months. Except for one thing, which was, okay, yeah, we'll it's sort of a bit of detail here. It's whatever level you are in our progression framework at Filtered right now, we'll transpose you onto that into the new role, and then off you go. So got going in mid-August with this new team, all the CSMs, hired in another CSM, and the plan was, right, everyone gets their own accounts, and off we go, and we're working. Simple. The one thing that I had failed to fully grasp and appreciate was how much each of those individual now CSMs, how much each of those individual people were not clear about their own progression in this role, beyond me saying, oh yeah, you're now going to be customer success managers at Filtered, and and off you go. And it then sort of came to the fore, like within a week of me making these changes, that the development plans that I had in my head for each of these individuals wasn't made clear to them. But also the progression framework that we had, which is a fairly generic thing within Filtered, was just that. It was too generic. It wasn't meaningful enough. So I had CSMs looking at this thing and thinking, oh, I'm actually no more this level. No, I'm more this level. What about this? What about that? I was like, damn, like I've really not helped by keeping things vague on this front, and not helped by not making it clear what the next 6, 9, 12 months beyond looks like as a CSM within Filtered. So that's the stuff that was sort of stewing, right? And I was like, damn, I've really like cocked up. How do I make this useful and valuable to each of these individuals. And so very quickly got to work building out a progression framework, but building out in a way that made sense to them and their roles, but also for what we needed in the business, for the nuances of our product and the way in which we were developing. Our CSMs weren't quota carrying, but they were much more product specialists. So I needed to make sure all of those sorts of things were reflected and reflected meaningfully. And had it not been for this brilliant thing called Progression App, which had a lot of stuff in its library, and then it used a bit of GPT-3 before it became a hot thing to like really build out some stuff. Incredible! Like I would not have been able to do what I needed to do in the time that I had without it. But the outcome is the most important thing, because it meant that I could then have soon after. It still took me a good few weeks to get to this point. Conversations with each of those individuals about, okay, what do you think of the framework as a whole? Cool, it looks about right, great. Where do you see yourself, first of all, rather than me saying where I think you should be? Okay, great. We're broadly aligned. And in all cases, we were broadly aligned. Some cases where we weren't on some of the specifics, like, why do you think you're there right now? What examples do you have to show that you're hitting that particular bit of the framework? Okay, cool. Let's figure out a way in which we can get you there. And that became, oh my God, like maybe it was because of the slightly difficult period that I had before that, but that became such an important moment, I think, for that team and our relationship together, that it allowed us to then focus on the future meaningfully, and to a large extent alleviated a lot of their concerns about, right, what does progression look like for me in this role? A really simple thing looking back at it, this should have just been part of the plan for the changes that I needed to make. No one called me out on it. I think most other people that I was taking this to in the business were like, yeah, I'm sure Vinit's kind of figured it out. I'm sure it's fine. But actually, I hadn't. And it wasn't until the team had come back to me and told me, what does it look like, that it made a huge difference.
But I think you should give yourself, as you said, you go easy on yourself. You're alive.
Yeah, take some of my own advice.
In that you caught it in the best way, which is you had the open conversation with your team, who came back and said, "Whoa, we're missing here something, boss. This is not quite a thing." Okay, well, let's dig in and find out how it can be a thing. And the fact that you did that rather than truck on regardless at 100 miles an hour, and you only find out when half of them quit.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
It's a win.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a win. There you go.
I'll take that.
Good. Tell me, Vin, what else are you working on at present?
Yeah, so sorry, I just wanted to say the other thing is, in my long spiel there, looking back, I think progression is something that we put off at Filtered for a long time. When we did it, we put in something fairly generic, and at the time it was great because it was going from nothing to something generic, fine. But then actually now what we're going through right now is more specific frameworks. So there's lots out there, and if you use them and you use them well, they can make a huge difference. Anyway,
which ones are you using? Let's take a plug and get some advice from you.
Yeah, sure.
Using, what was it, Progression App, you said?
ProgressionApp.com is excellent. They only started a few years ago, and now they can cover most roles in most businesses. The other one that I've frequently gone back to is Stack Overflow. So Stack Overflow actually have a lot of job descriptions. So that's the other thing, right? Like, we all obsess about job descriptions. I can't actually stand them. I think they're pretty useless, to be honest. They're at best frozen in time, very often poorly written, and they don't really reflect and don't give a sense of progression. What's coming next? What should you have done prior to that? Which other directions can you move in diagonally, for example? Progression frameworks, if they're done well, can help you there. So yeah, those are my go-to. I'm sure there are others out there. Some of the HR tech that we use have some built in. So we're currently using Lattice. We were on 15.5 before, but Lattice do have some built in. But yeah, my favorite so far is Progression App.
I will definitely have a look at that. It's a thing. I mean, it's a question I think that a lot of people they sit on. If you think about it in your own context, you're sitting there as an employee, perhaps. What's next? That's it. What's next? What's next after this? Well, I've only just been promoted an hour and a half ago. I have to get my head around my job. Yeah, even still, what's next?
And what do I need to do to get that next thing?
Yeah.
That's the missing thing, I think. And a development plan, horrible bit of sort of HR jargon, but it's a thing. It's a thing that, if you care about it, you should take seriously. It doesn't mean anything unless it's steeped in something realistic, right? So some things that you need to have gone and achieved or done or had a go at doing. And if you're just making them up on the fly, it's really hard as a manager, and especially as a first-time manager. So if you can look at something and point to it and be like, these are the things you kind of need to do to help move along, then you really do help yourself and you help that person, because you can have a much more objective conversation.
So that's what you've been working on at present, is building out your progression plans.
Well, yeah, kind of present-ish. It was a sort of a thing that was occupying my mind a lot over the back end of last summer. In terms of what I'm working on right now, I mean, a bunch of things, but actually one thing kind of left field that I've become very interested in, and it's now sort of manifesting itself into a thing, is following and studying certain sales and commercial thought leaders through LinkedIn. So I'm gonna share something in the next few days. And actually I found that if you follow the right people, then you can actually sort of learn for free, because if they're talking about the stuff that you care about and you value, then it's just a simple case of opening your LinkedIn feed, consuming that content, using it, even banking it to form your own playbooks and whatever you want to do. But crucially, just absorbing it. And I think, again, that's another shortcut that I take to my team. I was like, if you want to become a master in this craft, then follow the right people, because there's a good chance that they're talking about the stuff that they're seeing day in and day out, and you can learn a lot from them. There's again another shortcut to learning and development, which I know you know a lot about.
It's free mentoring, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's free mentoring.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the very essence of Filtered is that content is not the actual problem. Right?
I'm glad you plugged us and not me.
Absolutely. If anybody's looking for a solution to having too much e-learning content shite floating around their company, go and talk to Vin and the team at Filter, because they will plow through it, chuck out 90% of it, and leave you with the stuff you actually need and want.
You couldn't have said it better.
There we go. I'm sure there's a better pitch there for you. What are you reading right now, Vin? What are you reading? What are you listening to?
I must confess, I'm not a big reader, and I will often listen to pretty terrible music on Spotify. But I do, podcasts and Audible books. I go kind of ebb and flow, but I like the stuff that the Revenue Intelligence, like the Reveal Gong podcast puts out, is really good stuff. And of course your podcast,
of course.
Your others, cannot forget that. One of the best books, so if you're in sales and in sales leadership, The Qualified Sales Leader by John McMahon.
Yes, he's great.
Is brilliant, because again, much like the content, much like your content, it's short, bite-sized enough that you get a lot of high value from it without having to invest tons and tons of time. So that's a go-to actually.
I enjoyed that. That's a good book. Good. What would you like to thank young Vin for having done?
That's a good question. Young Vin, whose hairline was about 3 centimeters further down than where it is right now. I actually think that one of the things I would thank myself for doing is saying yes to a lot of opportunities and to lots of people and to new projects and new ideas. I think for me, much like I mentioned at the earlier part of this this chat, was having lots of experiences that you can rack up and take with you. You sometimes you seek them out, sometimes they come to you, and if you can say yes to them, or you're just open to the idea that there's a bunch of different things that you could do, especially early on in your career, whether it's because you're a first-time manager or it's your first new role or you're just first into the workplace. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to take all of that energy and enthusiasm and to soak it all up. And so having that attitude of sort of saying yes, even if it feels a bit scary, I think is a brilliant thing if you can get yourself there. It's a bit different later on in life, though, ironically, because then you kind of need to get good at saying no, which is actually quite hard. And saying no well, and focusing on things. But I think generally, yeah, I would definitely thank myself for being open to lots of different things.
I think that the discomfort zone, everybody's got a comfort zone, but it's the discomfort zone, actually being aware of that and finding that if you're in the discomfort zone, it's generally a good thing. You're uncomfortable because, let's say as a manager, you've delegated too much and you're thinking, oh God, they're going to screw it up. Well, then you know what? That's exactly where you should be, because you're learning and they're learning. You're making a decision and you're not sure, oh goodness me, it's really, the consequences could be. That's a good place to be. Because if we are all sitting in our comfort side, you're just mumbling along, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's different for different people at different parts in their life and their journeys. When we've had both of our kids, I've definitely at that point wanted to be slightly more in my comfort zone than my discomfort zone.
Oh yes, that's different.
Yeah, that's
entirely different. Your children are not allowed to make you discomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. But those life moments, they weave into your work life, right? So yeah, finding the right times to switch modes, I think, is an important thing as well.
Then lastly, as we wrap up, how can people find you? What are your coordinates?
Through this podcast, through you, LinkedIn. So Vinit Patel. There aren't many of us, but there are quite a few of us. It's a fairly popular surname. Website, I work at Filtered, so you can come to filtered.com. I am on Twitter, but I'm not particularly active on that. But yeah, LinkedIn's the main one. If you should want to come out and chat to me.
And why wouldn't they? Vinit Patel, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, Paul.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me today. Your homework is to leave your 5-star review, and please, any comments you have, you really help me to improve every day, and it also helps people to discover me online. You should check out practical-leadership.academy because you want to help your new managers succeed with hybrid or remote working.